Splatoon 2 is a cephalopod-based multiplayer game with a somewhat frustrating single-player mode and an infinite amount of paint. I give it a 7 out of 10. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion is a frankly baffling video game, with some of the purest video gameness I've ever experienced, which all leads up to a great last half hour. I give it a 7 out of 10. Tacoma is a celestial adventure game, telling the story of the crew of a space station in a corporate-controlled future and explores the nature of AI, also featuring a cat in space. I give it an 8 out of 10. Celeste is an incredibly difficult platformer, with a story which I'd care about a lot more if I weren't constantly frustrated with the gameplay. I give it a 6 out of 10. Axiom Verge is a Metroidvania which goes heavy on the Metroid, with a wide range of guns, most of which I found useless, and a world which is a chore to traverse. I give it a 6 out of 10. Gunpoint is a stealth puzzle platforming noir detective industrial espionage game which takes only a little longer to play than it does to describe, in which you play as some form of frog-human chimera. I give it an 8 out of 10. Super Mario Bros. Is an iconic platformer whose value almost defies critique, though I didn't really enjoy my time with it. I give it a 7 out of 10. Just Cause 4 is an action-adventure game which, despite being probably the shortest in the series, still manages to overstay its welcome. I give it a 6 out of 10. Fire Emblem Engage is a visual novel with brief snippets of tactical RPG gameplay in the middle, in which you can marry all manner of cute boys. I give it an 8 out of 10. Katamari Damacy ReRoll is a charming puzzle game with controls that are hard to get used to and which gave me constant headaches, yet which I loved the entire time. I give it an 8 out of 10. Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight is a short Metroidvania which fills its role perfectly, even if it can be frustrating at times. I give it a 7 out of 10. What the Golf is a sports puzzle game with many interesting ideas and levels, and then 5 levels that are legitimately infuriating. I give it an 8 out of 10. Elite Dangerous is a space exploration flight sim with trading, mining, combat, aliens, and no end in sight. I give it an 8 out of 10. Terra Nil is an environmental construction sim which is fun but surprisingly shallow, short, buggy, and which left me feeling thoroughly disappointed. I give it a 6 out of 10. Autonauts is a great programming-focused sandbox game which is fun for the first 50 hours and then angered me so much I had to learn Lua to mod in fixes. I give it an 8 out of 10. Resident Evil 4 Remake is the one remake no one thought we needed, but which has ended up being the best of the bunch by trimming the fat while expanding on the areas which really needed it, though I would have liked to spend more time with Don Quixote. I give it a 9 out of 10. Path of Giants is a chill puzzle game which was great to play around Christmas, though its difficulty curve is more of a difficulty zigzag. I give it a 7 out of 10. Donkey Kong is an arcade platformer which relies a little too heavily on randomness for my liking, but is essentially responsible for all of video games past the 1980s, so I can't be too hard on it. I give it a 6 out of 10. Behind the Frame, The Finest Scenery is a charming and beautiful adventure game in which you solve puzzles to find the colours you need to paint the portraits of your life, while repeatedly eating an incredibly boring breakfast. I give it an 8 out of 10. Donkey Kong Jr. is an arcade platformer with Mario as the bad guy, which 40 years later feels pretty weird and isn't quite as fun as the prior game, but at least the climbing is good. I give it a 5 out of 10. Octopath Traveler 2 is a fantastic RPG with 8 stories for 8 characters, and while some end stronger than others, its overall quality solidifies it as one of my favourite series. I give it an 8 out of 10. Alone in the Dark Prologue utterly failed to make me interested in Alone in the Dark by being both incredibly short and kinda boring, but it does have a crow in it, so that manages to net it some points. I give it a 5 out of 10. Minoria is the spiritual successor to the Momodora games, with a new art style and new breast physics, but with the same slightly rough Metroidvania gameplay and odd difficulty spikes. I give it a 7 out of 10. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is an utter mess, with terrible performance, boring open world sections, a plot which ends abruptly, and gameplay which tells one story while the cutscenes tell another. I give it a 6 out of 10. Wheel of Katamari ReRoll plus Royal Reverie still has a lot of the fun of Katamari Damacy, but it's just a little less charming, and including some new challenges which are forgettable at best and frustrating at worst. I give it a 7 out of 10. Like a Dragon Ishin, like any good Yakuza game, starts off with a murder and evolves into a sprawling political drama which will shape the future of Japan, during which you kick people into a river. I give it an 8 out of 10. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is Nintendo's first foray into the open world genre, and while it's a good open world game, it's my least favourite Zelda game. I give it a 6 out of 10. Hue is a colourful puzzle platformer with controls I found just a little too annoying to get truly comfortable with, and puzzles which were largely intuitive until I'd run into one which would utterly break my brain. I give it a 7 out of 10. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom mostly improves over Breath of the Wild, with areas that are at least reminiscent of temples, if not exactly scratching that itch, but it also includes all of the things I disliked from the prior game. I give it a 7 out of 10. Shady Part of Me has a somewhat disjointed story, with characters that argue about things that aren't happening and gameplay that feels largely separate from the plot, but the puzzle platforming is at least competent and it wraps up well. I give it a 7 out of 10. Pocket Puzzle is a cute little puzzle game which you could probably beat in an afternoon, and while my time with it had some game-breaking bugs, the dev was responsive and quickly got it fixed. I give it a 7 out of 10. Final Fantasy XVI is an action-heavy JRPG, and while the combat was shallower than I expected, the characters and their relationships are easily some of my favourites I've ever experienced. I give it a 9 out of 10. Pikmin 4 is a game about time management, which utterly destroyed mine by being one of the most addictive games I've ever played. I give it an 8 out of 10. Word Factory is a decent puzzle game, but for a game about combining letters to make other characters, the recipes can sometimes require some wild leaps in logic. I give it a 7 out of 10. Coffee Talk has some odd language issues at times, and I don't actually like Freya at all, but the other characters are great and it's nice making drinks despite how finicky the recipes can be. I give it an 8 out of 10. Predynastic Egypt is a historical resource management strategy game which I thoroughly enjoyed despite rarely having any idea what was actually going on. I give it an 8 out of 10. Earth Defense Force Iron Rain is the second shortest EDF game, and one which I think I was overly harsh on at first, though it does have a bad camera and clearly inferior weapon unlock system, and you should definitely steer clear of the DLC missions. I give it a 6 out of 10. Cat Quest is an adorable action RPG which doesn't really end so much as it just stops, but it's a fun time with cute characters while it lasts. I give it a 7 out of 10. Here Comes Nico teaches you that being a good friend requires the ability to jump from great heights without issue, which is probably where I've been going wrong all these years. I give it an 8 out of 10. Ultimate Epic Battle Simulator is more of a mediocre fighting attempt, which doesn't work great and only holds its novelty for about 20 minutes. I give it a 4 out of 10. Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon is a game I really wanted to love but never quite got to, where I rarely felt powerful or skilled, only occasionally lucky. I give it a 7 out of 10. Hexcells Infinite is the final Hexcells game with more levels and higher difficulty, but it also adds user-created and infinitely generated levels, making it clearly the most value-filled entry in the series. I give it a 7 out of 10. Assassin's Creed Mirage is less hot air and more an oasis in a desert of lackluster Assassin's Creed titles, and while it doesn't reach the series' heights, it's a damn sight better than what we've been getting for the last 7 years. I give it a 7 out of 10. Opus Magnum is a Zachtronics puzzle game, so you already know it's going to be hard, but it's the first one I've managed to finish, so it's clearly the best. I give it an 8 out of 10. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is another strong entry in the series, with a great story and overall improvements on the formula, but I definitely had more bugs and frustrations playing this than either of the prior games. I give it a 7 out of 10. Little Inferno is an arsonist's favourite puzzle game, though there's a lot more waiting around than I'd like there to be. I give it a 7 out of 10. Off-World Trading Company is a real-time strategy unlike any other I've played, by focusing on resource management and stock prices rather than traditional unit placement. I give it an 8 out of 10. SteamWorld Dig is most people's first foray into the SteamWorld series, with some pretty strong combat and story to keep you going, but I love clearing out the mine most. I give it an 8 out of 10. SteamWorld Build tries to strike a delicate balance between city building and mine management, with some tower defense sections sprinkled in for good measure, but when that balance fails, it drags the whole experience down. I give it a 7 out of 10. Special thanks to Thunderful for providing the key to this game. Venba has a great soundtrack and unique style, on top of being the only puzzle game that's ever managed to make me hungry and sad at the same time. I give it a 7 out of 10. SteamWorld Dig 2 is a mining-focused Metroidvania, a great follow-up to the first game, and plays a pivotal role in SteamWorld building for the rest of the franchise. I give it an 8 out of 10. Yakuza 3 continues the series' tradition of teaching us what it means to be a man, this time with the important lesson that you're not a real man until you've been shot. I give it an 8 out of 10.